How dry it is. We have gone days and days and days without rain. Amarillo, Texas, 103 days without rain. So you are right there in the middle of this fire alert for today. We've got the red flag warnings that are up Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Wichita, Springfield, Missouri. We are also in it as well. So here's a look at one of the factors. We look at the relative humidity. You know, I always talk about dew points, and in general, I think dew points are useful, but the RH, or relative humidity, is really critical when it comes to fire forecasting. And when it drops below 10%, which we might even see this afternoon, you really get into those critical levels. Temperatures are going up. It's finally warming up, right? I know we needed a warm up here, but the air is very dry. The dew points are low, and when there's a big spread between the temperature and the dew point, that's your low RH, and that's going to happen this afternoon. Not to mention the winds are going to kick up. It's a south wind. This is what's helping to warm us up today, this strong south wind, but it's also going to elevate the fire risk, and we'll especially see that, I think, across Kansas and Oklahoma, matching up with those areas where the red flag warnings are. Plus the drought situation. So we have about 60% of the entire country actually with abnormally dry conditions, but the heart of the drought right now is right here across the plains. You can see extreme levels in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma.
Chicago. Let's go to Jen in the lab.
You know, it was really a fascinating forecast situation. I know it was just a mess of a commute and a dangerous one at that, but we had to look back and see what happened. Why was it so hard to see that this freezing drizzle was going to occur in the Chicago area? So this is the radar, and yesterday morning, when it was happening, there was almost nothing on the radar until about 8 o'clock. Well, looping through it again, nothing on the radar, and yet at the same time, freezing drizzle was occurring across the area. Your cars, your front steps, your driveways, your streets, your interstates were getting coated with freezing drizzle. So let's bring up the sky profiler and show you what was happening in the atmosphere at this time. So this is actually a classic situation for freezing drizzle or flurries or nothing. And we've put up a profile of what the atmosphere looked like at that time. Couple of things that I got to point out. So you go down to the surface up to about 2,000 feet, and that's where the clouds are. That's where the air is saturated. That's where the temperature and the dew point are close together. They're all below freezing. But you go up beyond, 4,000 feet, and the air gets very dry. In fact, you go all the way up to 6,000 feet. The air is very dry, and nothing is happening up there. That's where the temperature, actually, when you go up beyond that, the temperature will be cold enough to produce snow. There's just no moisture up there, so that's not going to happen. So everything is happening down here at these lower levels. And normally, when you get a situation like this, you might get nothing. You might get a few flurries, which aren't a big deal, or there is always a chance for freezing drizzle like we saw yesterday, and that's exactly what happened down here. Just a very light coating, hardly measurable at all. The droplets were actually so small that the radar couldn't see them, which is why they didn't show up. Back to you.
Weekend?
Well, the storm is going to work its way east, so let's take a look at that. So your forecast today is the snow in the west, the Sierra getting some good snow, the Wasatch. After last week, we finally sort of opened up the season with some new fresh snowfall, and that'll continue again with this storm system. Meanwhile, in the east, it's all about the warm up, close to 60 in Atlanta and Nashville, looking good. Florida looking great as well, but enjoy it because we are going to have some rain big time coming in this weekend. Temperatures in Chicago hit 50, New York were 40 by Friday. So all looking good and dry to wrap up your work week. This is a good travel day, right? Looking good all across the east. But then watch what happens. I mean, overnight Friday, it all develops, and Saturday morning, you wake up and it's pouring in Houston and New Orleans. In Memphis, we've got the rain. Showers are going to start to work into parts of Alabama like Birmingham, Atlanta. By evening, rain showers start to pick on up. And by Sunday, the rain is here. It is all rain. Asheville, rain. Charlotte, rain. Greenville, rain. We're all going to see rain. Raleigh as well. Even up to Philly and New York. Look at 50 degrees in New York City. It is rain. But then we got to watch on the back edge. By Monday, there could be some snow working in to the interior parts of the north and east. Snowstorm in this northwest is going to increase the danger of avalanches. So I want to talk about what makes them so unpredictable. I want to start actually with, think about a pile of books. If you have a lot of thin books neatly stacked up, that's pretty stable, right? But if you start putting a big book on top of a bigger book, on top of a smaller book and a bigger book, that's very unstable. And that is sort of the situation you get into with avalanches. It's about layers of snow and also the steep of the ground. So a flatter slope, I should say, requires something to sort of trigger the avalanche. When you have a steeper slope, you sort of get a little bit of snow that moves down. It's a little more stable. But when you have a flatter slope and then you get these layers of snow, the bed layer, the weaker layer, the slab layer, and then you keep adding to this, something can trigger an avalanche. And oftentimes it's a skier, a snowboarder, a snowmobile, all can trigger an avalanche. And you get this snow. It's thousands of tons of snow. It can move at 80 miles per hour down these slopes, and it's of course a huge danger. You can't outski an avalanche. You certainly can't outrun an avalanche. And so some safety tips for you: don't go to the mountain alone. 90% of avalanche deaths are due to a human trigger. So plan your route ahead of time. When there are avalanche warnings, like there are today actually in the Northwest here, heed them and don't ski in the backcountry. And wear a transmitting device or an avalanche beacon. So I want to take a look at, unfortunately, the fatalities that have happened from avalanches. And you go back here to the previous decades and years. This year so far, there have been 7 deaths. Last year, there were 12. You go back to the season of 2015 to 2016, there were 30 deaths. So hopefully we keep this number down this year. Again, heed all of the safety precautions, and we are going to continue to see, especially in the Northwest, with these big snows and these big layers of snow being very unstable, that in the backcountry it will unstable when it comes to avalanches.
And Jen, that period of dry, warm weather we had in November, early December is making for such a dangerous avalanche season.
The weather is always front of mind before a death-defying stunt, and Nick Walenda joins us now in studio to talk all about it. So glad to have you here. Thank you so much.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the stunts. I'm assuming that when you do any of these stunts, weather is one of the biggest factors that you have to think of.
It really is, because it's the only mentally, physically, but the weather's completely out of our control. That's why our buddy Jim Cantori is always there with me, watching my back.
It's critical. I mean, has weather ever forced you to cancel or postpone a stunt?
You know, I have, although, you know, when I was crossing the Grand Canyon, as those that watched saw, I got hit with 2 53-mile-an-hour gusts of wind.
I mean, can you walk on this with any moisture at all?
I can. So I walked across Niagara Falls, and it can't get any more wet than that.
Yeah.
Actually, it was almost to the point where there was no visibility whatsoever. And so I absolutely can walk in wet conditions. Gusty wind is the worst. 30 miles an hour, I was sideways leaning into that wind, and they cut those wind machines off and immediately fell because there was no sidewalk with 53-mile-an-hour gusts, as you guys know. So that balancing pole really is a key.
Falls, I'm assuming that you trained with wet ropes, or I don't know if you
Absolutely.
call them
So
ropes
everything I
anymore.
try to create the same environment when I'm preparing for these events. So we actually had fire trucks come in. They set their ladders all the way up, and they sprayed a heavy mist on me as I.
That you practice? Or
It
hired?
is. So I started walking a wire. Actually, my mom was 9 months
You wanna go
pregnant with
first?
me, and she was walking the wire
With
still.
you?
So I'm
Really?
sorry, 6 months pregnant. So she was walking the
Wow.
wire. I've been walking the wire longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
But at about 18 months, I started at this height, and so does my entire family. There's actually 16 of us that still perform on the
Wow.
wire, believe it or not.
Have you
I'm
ever
definitely
walked
taking
in on like snowy or cold conditions, or
So
have you thought
my
about it?
mom has walked. She did a New Year's
I need some tips
event.
before I go. Give me a few
All right,
tips to
so
stop this conversation.
so one foot in front of the other and focus. Make sure your foot is centered on the
Okay,
wire.
do you face out or down?
Actually, face the end of the wire. So I always face the stable point at the other end.
Okay.
So as you take your step, make sure that your foot is centered on the wire. And what I'd like you to do is we're going to come to the middle, and I'm going to keep my hand here, but I want you to try to balance on your own.
I think you can do it, Jen. You're pretty athletic. All right, so talk about the snow. Have you ever thought about doing anything in
let's
snowy
stop right here.
conditions?
So my mom has actually walked with icicles on the wire. I was a lot younger at that
Stop.
point, but she has. And actually, one of my dreams is I've got a couple. Look at you! Wow, good job. It's a long way down.
Here,
Yeah,
I'll
you give it a try.
Yeah. All right.
So
With
I have
icicles?
I have a dream of walking in a blizzard.
Stop.
You know, it's all about, you know, what are the limits to.
Would that be
and I
a
think
new
that's what life
record?
is
Would
about.
that be-
I would
would this
imagine it
be
would be.
hard?
I don't know anyone that has.
It's harder
but,
than you think.
It is.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I enjoy those challenges. I would say my biggest goal is to walk over an active volcano. So that's something
she
that I've got
turned
a
her feet
team
a
working
little
on.
bit.
Well,
which is
he
good.
said before,
Yeah.
he said if you're wearing sneakers, because you said the best shoes are the ones your mom makes.
That's right. Yeah. So my
But
mom
sneakers
makes.
are different.
It's kind of like an Indian moccasin.
Let's see. Yeah.
Here, go ahead and balance. But
Okay.
I'm gonna keep my hand here.
She gets a hand the whole time.
Well, no, I
So
feel
what,
like-
I mean, give us the secret though. What's
Woo! Yeah, it is hard.
Very good.
what is
So there,
your
you know,
secret for doing this?
it's really about training and preparing, both
Yeah.
physically and mentally.
All right,
And
then
I
you'll
think-
see how fast you can go across. By
Who,
the way,
me?
No, Nick.
No,
on
Nick.
we can't
Well-
even get halfway across. He could probably just do it.
I mean,
You know, it's all about using your extremities. Again, the more that you can use them to balance, the more stable you are. You know, part of our training is we actually try to walk, and we play as a family, we have chicken fights, we try to walk with our arms down. And again, it's just about being able to balance it, you know, with
can take the wind?
any situation.
you can take any kind of wind.
yeah, give him
can
some
take
wind,
wind,
Jen.
yeah.
Force,
Give him
any kind
some
of force.
wind.
What about a little No.
He can take it good.
Give him like a big shove. Wow.
He probably
That's
won't
part of
matter.
our
He
training,
said he
though.
trained
All
like
right,
130
Nick
mile an hour
Walenda, the
winds.
famous Walendas, are touring with the Big Apple Circus. You can see it there.
Nick, thanks so much.
Awesome.
That was
Thank
awesome.
you.